Hey everyone, Rick Oliva here. In this video I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about creating modal chord progressions in a contemporary context. So this will be a little bit different than if you're in a music theory class and you're talking about ancient music or Baroque or classical music. How modes are used in a contemporary context will be the topic of discussion for this video. One of the things too is we want to think when we're creating something that's going to sound modal versus just sound like it's in a major or minor tonality, is we want to emphasize the notes that make the mode sound different than either the natural minor or its relative major scale. So let's get into that. In case you aren't familiar with what we're talking about here, if I take a C major scale, which is no sharps or flats, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and I play chords based, or if I play triads based on those scale degrees, we'd have C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and back to a C chord. When I make a chord progression, if the way that I set it up, say I play a 1, 4, 5, so C is 1, C, D, E, F is 4, G is 5. So I play a 1, 4, 5 in the key of C. I'd have C, F, G, back to the C. In that case, it sounds like my chord of resolution is going to be a C in that case. So if I play just C to F, to C to G. Now if I stop on that F, it doesn't really sound like that's where I was going to stop. And one of my teachers, when I remember I was in my undergrad studies at Berkeley, Barry Nettles, he'd always say, if you'd ask what key something was in, he'd say, well, where does it sound like it's going to resolve? Not where does it resolve, but where does it sound like it's going to resolve? Where does it sound like it's going to go to? And most of the time, most people will agree of the chord of resolution when a chord progression is played. So in this case, if I play C, F, to a G, to a G7, most people are waiting for that C to come back. So we're in C major. If I were to play a chord progression that were to resolve to a D minor chord, we'd be in D Dorian. Now that doesn't mean that the first chord of the song is D minor, and it doesn't mean that the last song of the chord is D minor. What it means is, if I'm playing this song, or if I'm playing this passage of a song, because you could play something that's modal that's only 16 measures in an entire song, but this passage sounds like it's going to resolve to D minor. So it's not quite as easy just saying, okay, well I'm going to play D minor to a G, to a C, to a D minor, because in that case I think most people would agree that it just sounded like I was playing the 2 chord, if C is 1, D minor is 2, the 2, 5, 1, back to a 2. It doesn't sound like it's going to resolve to the D minor. If I do this, especially if I play that as a G7 chord, so I go D minor to a G7 to a C. It sounds like that's where I've stopped, and now if I go to the D minor, it sounds like I've continued on then with the chord progression or with the cycle, but my key of resolution is a C. Now, if I wanted to sound modal, if I wanted to sound like D minor, D Dorian, excuse me, one of the things I have to consider is, okay, well, the difference between D Dorian and D natural minor. D natural minor would be the relative of F major. F major has 1 flat, which is a B flat. So on the D Dorian, I want to emphasize the fact that I'm not playing the B flats. And if I'm just playing the D minor chord, now I can do that with my melody by just playing, by emphasizing that I'm playing the B instead of the B flat. But remember, this video is about creating modal chord progressions, not modal melodies. So I want to make sure that I'm playing this B natural somewhere in one of the chords. Now I could do it by making it a D minor 6 chord. You can do that. That happens more often in a jazz or R&B context than in, say, rock or blues, for instance. But you could do it. But you can also do it by emphasizing the chords and where you put the stresses on the chords and how often you play the D minor and on what beat and what sequence these are happening. So if I do something like this, so I can play my D minor to a C, back to the D minor. If I go, if I do that and I play that G major to A minor to D. I'm sorry, I threw in a D major there on accident. But if I go D minor to C, back to the back to the D minor, and go G major, A minor, D minor, it sounds like the D is the chord of resolution. If I stop on any of the other chords or go anywhere else, it won't sound bad. It just won't sound like that's my chord of resolution. If I go. It doesn't sound bad. It sounds like it wants to go there. Doesn't sound bad. Doesn't sound bad, but both of those chords make it sound like I want to end here on the D minor. So that's one way that you could do it. Here's another example. If I do Phrygian. So if I do the relative Phrygian of C major. So Phrygian is based on a third scale degree. In case we didn't go over this, it goes Ionian, which is your natural major. The second scale degree is Dorian, third is Phrygian, fourth is Lydian, fifth is Mixolydian, sixth is Aeolian or natural minor, seventh is Locrian. So if I'm starting on E minor, I go E minor to an F major to a G major. If I just go up to this C, what it sounds like is I started a chord progression on the 3 chord, went 3, 4, 5, 1. So it sounds like I'm a E natural minor is the 6th of G major, and so G major has F sharps. If I want this to sound like E Phrygian and I want it to not sound like C major, I need to make sure that my chord progression sounds like it's going to resolve to an E minor, and I need to emphasize an F natural and avoid playing F sharp. Now, ultimately, if the song needs an F sharp in it, you should play F sharp. If when you play it and you say, well, it sounds better if I play a D major chord instead of a D minor chord in a certain chord progression, then by all means play it, because you should play what sounds good. But if you're trying to stretch your ears, so to speak, and make something that sounds modal, and you want to hear what the mode of E Phrygian sounds like, this would be a way to do it. So we'd go E minor. Now I can do this F major and a G major, but see, if I just throw an F by doing that, the G dominant sound really does not sound like it wants to go back to an E minor. The G dominant sound really sounds like it wants to go to C major. But if through the motion of the bass I make it sound like the chords are going to move a certain direction, I can also force the listener's ear to buy into the fact that we're playing this other mode. So if I go E minor to the F to the G, F, now that I've taken my bass, E, F, G, F, it really is going to sound like it wants to go back to the E minor. So I go like this. Do something like that. Now that sounds Phrygian, and it doesn't sound like C major, even though we're still playing all the same notes. If this was on the piano, it would be all white keys. Okay, we're playing the same exact notes if we're playing the key of C major, but we're telling the listener's ear that we're resolving to an E minor chord. And since we aren't playing F sharp, since we aren't playing, for instance, we could play E minor to a D over F sharp to a G chord, back to a D over F sharp to an E minor. We aren't doing that, so it's not E natural minor. We're telling the listener, no, we're playing E Phrygian. And keep this in mind when you're soloing, especially for guitar players. But I see all the time is guitar players will they'll learn these scale patterns. So they'll learn a scale pattern for E Phrygian, and so when they're playing E Phrygian, they're just playing this pattern that they have memorized. But really, you're just playing no sharps or flats. And that's going back to some of my older videos where it's just learning the notes on the guitar. The notes that you play on E Phrygian are the same exact notes that you play on C major or G Mixolydian or D Dorian. It's the same exact notes. You don't need to learn scale patterns. You just need to learn what the notes are. Once you learn where all the natural notes are on the guitar, then the rest is easy. Let's just do one more. Let's do Mixolydian. We'll leave Locrian and Lydian for another day because I'm watching the timer here and we're already approaching the 11-minute mark. So we're going to shift keys to G major. G major has one sharp in it. So it's G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G is the notes in the scale. If we do a 1, 4, 5 in that, so G is 1, A, B, C is the 4, D is the 5. G, C, G, D. So there's a million songs that are G, C, G, D, or G, C, D, or G, D, C, D, G. Brown Eyed Girl, for instance, the first one that came to my mind. Hey, where did we go? Days when the rains came down in the hollow, playing a new game. If I stop on the C or the D, the song does not sound like it has resolved. Hey, where did we go? Days when the rains came. There's no resolution. That's where it sounds like it's going to resolve to, is this G chord. Now, if we do the relative Mixolydian, though, of that, here's a really common one that happens in rock songs all the time. Is you could think of a really common classic rock Mixolydian as being a 5-4-1 of a relative major. Now, what that means, I have G major, G, A, B, C is the 4, D is the 5. So if I go D, C to G, 5-4-1, watch what happens. So I'm going D to C to G. She's got a smile that it seems to me reminds me of childhood memories where everything was as fresh as the bright blue. Well, same exact chords, but now stopping on the G does not make sense. Skies, right? Now and then when I see her face, she takes me away to that special place. And if I stare too long, I'll probably break down and cry. Right? So it's the same exact chords, G, C, D, or D, C, G. One is going to be Mixolydian, one is going to be relative major. Once again, the notes you play are exactly the same. Melodically, and we talked about this, melodically you could switch them up. Melodically you could play G major scale or E minor scale, or you could play D major scale or whatever. You can play whatever you want. And one of the things that you should remember is modal doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to sound weird. A lot of times people think, oh yeah, if I play something that's in a mode, then that really is going to stand out. Not necessarily. Here's one. If I go Louie Louie in A, right? So it's A major tonality, but it's got a 1 chord, a 4 chord, 5 minor chord, right? So instead of 1, 4, 5 in major, it's 5 minor. Right? So that's also Mixolydian. I think, yeah. That's Mixolydian. Versus. Okay, so that is creating an introduction to creating modal chord progressions. The key is emphasize the notes that would make this different than its relative major or minor, right? And then get the ear to make it, set up your chords and your progression so that way your ear gravitates back to that chord of resolution that you're looking for. And then remember, it doesn't have to sound weird, and if you like the sound of something else better, then do that. because ultimately our goal in writing music is to write stuff that sounds good, or sounds like how we want it to sound. So whether that's dissonance or consonance, I'm not making a judgment over what's good, but it should sound like how you want it to sound. So don't, I wouldn't recommend you play something modal just for the sake of making it modal, but certainly mess around with this and experiment with these sounds so that way they become a natural part of your repertoire. So if you enjoyed this video, check my website, rickoliva.com, or patreon.com/rickoliva. All right, thank you.